There we go. So I took a quick look at the game, and as you said, you did lose quite convincingly, but that gives me an interesting opportunity to talk about how to not get behind by so much so quickly. And I think that's the most interesting takeaway from this game. So let's see, if you are black in this game, and enclosure can't be bad, same for white. This is possible. Like, it's impossible to say it's a bad move, because, well, of course it's not a bad move. You did get some comments that it might be difficult to make use of. So I would like to suggest the alternative of just approaching the corner, which usually follows in the way that white backs off, you slide in the corner, white defends, and you get a base. And I'm sure you have seen this before, and I'm sure you would be comfortable playing this.
Oh yeah, easily. That makes a lot more sense than what I did.
Well, so going for a 3-3, of course, it's fine. Just how you played it out is actually a bit curious. So let's take a quick look at that. So, can you tell me your thought process with this, Hana?
I don't think there was honestly enough of one.
Okay. Um, Usually, black should be happy enough to just keep pushing, because getting third line territory is not small. So, asking for more, or even in this case, asking for less, is usually a bad idea. So how this would follow usually is that now white harness, and you can push twice. Can you tell me why you want to, and then Tenuke, like, now you Tenuke, but can you tell me why black wants to push twice and not Tenuki say now?
I'd imagine it has to do with the cut or the honey that leads to a cut.
Right. The reason is simply that if white turns, it's Sente against the corner. So black cannot Tenuki now. Black has to answer. And white getting that turn in for free is extremely big. Like, you can see that white can start building it, like, very annoyingly. So if you just push once and then Tenuki, at least if white gets the turn in, you do not need to respond. Which means if you are worried about the bottom side, you can just limit it or play anywhere else. Right? So that is
Okay,
why
that's fair.
you want to push twice. Um, in the old variation, which is white harness immediately, uh, the modern variation is to push 3 times for the same reason. So the turn is not center. So the reason this Hane is a bit weird is that white actually has a nice opportunity to just turn here now. And this is quite nice influence. Or, yeah, white can do this too, which is also very good. So, the fact that you hunted and then had to protect against this move means white gets the next move on this area. And notice, if this stone isn't here, like white hunted directly, white cannot hunt back. Because you can Atari and Atari, right? But now
Okay.
that white has that stone, now white can hunt here. So this is why you really don't want to let white get e3 after white already has e4. Does that make sense?
Yes, very clear.
Good. So yeah, that is why you should just be happy enough to push her. Alternatively, you can also slide, but I would just say that if you're not sure what to do, just keep pushing. On the third line, you can keep pushing forever, because the points you're getting are enough to compensate for the wall. But on the second line, you want to push as few times as possible, because second line points are not worth enough.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Apparently I'm sending notes in the chat. Okay, but at least we did find a living shape in the corner, so that's nice. And why did they go there? Where did we play it then? Aha. What was your logic for this move? What were you thinking?
Again, not too much. I'm just trying to follow the opening here theory that I've learned, but I don't know if it's outdated or if it really is actually following it properly.
So what was the theory you were following here?
Corners, enclosures, sides.
So was the theory you were following get an extension from an enclosure?
Yeah, something like that.
Sure.
But as I'm looking at it, maybe K16 might have made more sense.
Yeah. So on the go board, you always have to think about right. On the go board, you always have to think about not only where you can build the most, where the opponent can build the most. And if it happens that the opponent can build more than you can, then you should try to prevent that instead of building yourself. And if you apply that logic to this board, then I believe you could find a move like K16. Because it looks like white has a wall on the bottom left corner, and white has a nice enclosure facing the top side. So if we imagine white stone here, it's actually starting to look quite scary. So just taking the time to plop a stone there and making sure white cannot get such a big development would be very nice. And notice, this follows the exact same logic you were following during the game, just for both players. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's pretty clear. I can see how making a move that takes from you and gives to me at the same time is better than something that just gives to me when you're already ahead.
Right, yeah, exactly. I would not. Okay, again, I have to emphasize white is not ahead yet. Like, you lost maybe point or two on the bottom left corner because you played it suboptimally, but black is not behind significantly. And playing here is a normal move, and you cannot fall behind much by playing normal moves. So this is not a bad move. Just when white, okay, well, white didn't. If white plays on top side now, I would say this game is more difficult for black than for white. And that is why I would recommend playing on top side instead. Right. But you get a bit lucky in that white actually played in a very small area. Can you tell me why the bottom side is a small area? It's not just about there being very few lines left.
I'd imagine to some degree you're taking advantage of the somewhat of a wall around D17.
So the reason the bottom side is uninteresting is that both players have a very strong position facing it. So any stone there will have no effect but whatever territory it makes directly. Right? So that means when either player gets a move here, doesn't put any pressure on the opponent, and it's even quite small. So yeah, then you play it on top side, and this move is so big that actually now I would again say that the game is even. Just because if you actually look at this board, who is building more now?
It's a lot closer to even, but
I would say it's quite easy to say that black is building more. Simply put, these black stones are working extremely well together. Right? And the entire right side is tied up too. While now white has a wall on the bottom side, but white cannot get an equivalent wall on the top side anymore. Right? So it is harder for white to tie their stones to build one big thing than it is for black on this board. Now, that said, I would actually prefer to play on the third line if you play on the top side. Do you have an idea why?
avoid a slide under.
Yeah, exactly. And just because we do not have support on the top left corner, we don't want to end up with a floating group. We want to make sure we will always have a base. But the difference really is tiny. Ah. What was the idea here?
It was just a little bit experimental. I wanted to see if he would still try to invade the 3-3.
Okay, so in this position, were you afraid of the 3-3 invasion?
I don't know if I would say afraid as much as curious because I really don't know what to deal with it. So
Okay.
I kind of see more of it.
It is entirely too slow to defend the corner this way, and the reason is that you should assume that if you get 3-3 invaded, the result is actually even. Both players get an equally playable position. That is why AI likes to play the 4-4, and that is why AI wants to 3-3 it. AI believes it is even. Now, when you play a move like this, it is true that you remove the possibility for the opponent to play 3-3, but you are not gaining much of anything. You are solidifying the corner, that is true, but the opponent can still very easily just come in and reduce from the outside. So, this is doing very little. Now, if you are worried about 3-3, I would actually recommend you to play 3-4 directly in the opening. Then you can't get invaded, and you won't feel like you have to defend against it. But if you play the 4-4 stone, you cannot play that. What you could play is maybe something like this to defend it more naturally and to actually defend it in a way that has an effect on the sides too. But if you are going to play this way, then I would prefer to see this move instead of playing k16. Just so you are doing as much as you actually can with this move. And now if you see this move on the board, it would feel silly to play k16 now. It feels like this move is not doing enough now. Like, you have support, so you could go even further. Or you could play elsewhere entirely. Does all that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Good. Then, yeah, I hope you can see why this move is very slow.
Yeah, especially since I was trying to defend against something that would have been an equal result. So it was.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because you have to remember that while the opponent does get the points from the corner, which is not small, but it does mean that, let's imagine it happens. So, pass and there. And let's just play this way. So, yeah, this is the modern variation if blackness. Side note, it used to be the case that white played this way. This is now considered too good for black. Reason being that this tiger mouth actually is too strong. It makes it too hard to reduce this area. So these days white actually just pushes once more and does not make the exchange on the right side. Right? Because they both achieve the same thing. If you push once more, so like here and here, it does the same thing as this exchange. That thing being this turn is not center. Right? That is again the same idea here. So, yeah. So, point was, if this happens, yes, white did steal your corner points, but black got a nice wall, and this wall will most likely make more points by the end of the game than white got in the corner. Right? And it may be hard to imagine, especially if you think white plays here. But even then, you can just play here and, I don't know, you can just play super passively. And you can see that this area is already actually quite big. Right?
Oh, I see.
So it doesn't take much imagination to see how that wall could become more points than the corner. And notice, that wall is strength. If white does not invade the 3-3, black does not have that strength on the outside. White can very easily just plop a stone there and it will live. Right? Or on the other side. Yeah. Right? So the 3-3 invasion removes possibilities from white. Okay. Oh. Interesting move. I can't say this move is bad. I do want to say that the white's move is actually very good because this move is working very well together with the corner and with this extension. So it does feel bad, and actually, if we now go back to this point, could you find me a better move for black?
Cat?
What area is important?
Well, I'd say white's left side, so maybe a cap on E10.
Okay, so cap on e10 is possible. It is also possible that you would want to invade here, maybe. But there's one simple option I actually want you to consider. What if you limit white's potential simply by building your own thing? This move should feel quite natural. Just building from your stones and pushing white back. Now, if you do play here, I think it's a fine move. Just you should be less inclined to play moves that only reduce if you don't have to play them. Right now you have a nice move on top side that reduces and builds for yourself. So yeah, your eyes should go here. And your eyes should go here especially because when you play a fourth line stone like this, you should be realized that the third line approaches are really annoying. And this move prevents it. Okay. But yeah, at this point I can't criticize this move too much because it is difficult to find an interesting move for black on this board. It is true. And shape-wise, H15 is actually a good move. So if you want to play locally, it's quite a good move. Another option you could think about is the kick. This is maybe a bit more territorially active. And white almost always wants to extend. And then you can maybe jump. And how does this position feel? Does it feel nicer than the game position?
Looks like you're claiming more on the right side.
You are getting more on the right side, but you do have to notice that white is also getting more on the left side. But in any case, in this position, black is building more than white is. So you should not refrain from playing this way. So yeah, I would consider this kick before I would consider H15. But again, impossible to say H15 is bad move. However, L17 should be a bad move. Locally the move for white is to attach and we can honey and fix. This could happen. Okay, so can you tell me why I think this move is bad?
You could split it.
Right. It's bad shape. So white is making a 2-space jump that you are already peeping. So just because white played bad shape, your first instinct should be to try to cut. Seems you did. How does this continue? Aha. Is there a reason you didn't continue with the cut?
I think I actually did try to read this out, but I didn't see anything that I actually got from it.
Aha, so let's play aside a few moves. What would you do as white?
17.
J17. Okay, then Atari.
Oh, I see.
When we are on the second line, you should always consider the Atari first, because it kills the stone. Basically always. So here white actually has to connect. And you can connect. And if you read this far, can you now tell me why this is good for black?
Because it cut off those stones and he really doesn't have a chance.
Yeah, so now white has to somehow make the A group live. And it will live, like no doubt. But also, white just destroyed whatever points there could have been in the B area. So even if white lives, black already gained a lot in territory. Just because the B area does not become points, ever.
So are you saying that L group would have ran and then black would have went towards F?
It's difficult for white to decide what to do. Running is possible. Running is painful because, first of all, we can like poke, like threaten to cut. White has to connect, and we can jump out. It's getting so difficult for white to find life nicely, right? And
Yes.
notice, if we just keep running, it's mutual destruction. White's wall on the bottom side is becoming increasingly less useful because no one is building points in the center anymore. So now it's all about side territory.
Wow.
And yeah, like, you don't need to read further than this. All you need to know is that now white has a weak group. You will benefit from that weak group somehow. It will happen. But you should also assume that it lives and try to play in a way that you gain even if it lives. Because usually groups don't die if no one makes a big mistake. Right. So yeah, this move just sadly is unnecessarily passive because the cut just works. But this move, okay, if you don't think the cut works, then actually the move I want you to consider is this turn. Reason is, this also fixes the cut, like it fixes it in ladder. But it also actually pressures white. So white has to respond. And we can keep pushing. We are gaining influence. Right? So if you don't think the cut works, then this should be the second thing you consider. I hope all that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely does. It's much more obvious that this is an example of me just not doing enough.
Right. And defending is not bad. Like, this move is defense. This is more active defense than jumping out. Okay.
What comes something that you said in your other video about look at the most violent move first and then decide
Right.
that.
Yeah, that is a very good way to do things. This shoulder it is interesting. Actually, this jump for white is interesting too, because you can still cut, right? This does not affect the issue, because this still doesn't work. So, white should be thinking of playing A, B, or C. One of them. Any of them fix the cut. B is usually the best option. You can probably see that the cut is now fine. So yeah, still in this position black could just cut. and white would be very sad. What was the idea with this move?
Try to squeeze him into a spot where he didn't have enough space to live.
Aha. Fair. Yeah, it's probably not bad. It does create bit annoying shape if white just pushes up. Because now it gets difficult to seal white in. Maybe still possible. But there are Ataris and annoying things everywhere. So it can get painful to try to keep this in. If white wants to push through. But I would say that if white does this, they are paying enough because black is actually building the right side, right? So I don't think white can actually play this way. Maybe the best move for white then would be to maybe jump this way. This is difficult to hold for black. Like if something like this happens, then we can just take every Atari VC and start cutting. It's painful. But okay. Okay, so this is interesting. Because white pushed here, you no longer have a liberty problem with the 016 stone. So white actually made it easier for you to defend this position.
Yes.
Because without this, then this push, now you can probably see that white can create issues for both of these stones at once. Because they have so few liberties. While in the game, now when white pushes here, they can only create liberty issues for this one stone. So this is easier for black to defend, and you can double one here. Sure, okay. Right. Now you play the ladder, and the ladder is quite a sad move. And the reason it's a sad move is that white still has so many liberty problems left that you don't want to let white to just fix everything at once. So it would be very prudent to... what would be the move? Maybe this one most obviously affects white's liberties. And if white tries to cut, then we can just start like taking the Ataris we have available. If we drop down here and white drops down... Oh hey, we have an Atari. Whoops, not there. Like very quickly gets difficult. This is probably not how it plays out, but one point is mostly that there are a lot of things you could do here, and it is easier for white to screw up than it is for black. But even if that's not an option, then if you imagine this happens and you fix this cut, black has so much more influence now on the board. And in the game you clearly were worried about this stone running. If we imagine white runs, can you tell me why you shouldn't be worried about this?
You know, I think in the game it was just kind of a reflex because from my limited experience, every time I get cut through, if I ignore it, then something eventually does happen.
Right. It's not terrible to ladder it, and maybe you could even like, if you do this first and force white to defend, then maybe you can ladder. this is better than what happened in the game. Just because you created problems for white. Like white has liberty issues with these stones, these stones, these stones, these stones. It is very likely that something happens later. But I just want you to get this perspective. Why could it be that this is not bad for black?
Well, I imagine because chasing it would actually concrete his territory.
So, the A group is quite strong. Like it has a tiger mount now, it will live. There's a really fun idea here, which is that I actually want to show you something. Which is that let's create an example. Maybe like this. Like this, sure. Tenuki and pincers, and with Tenuki and white attacks. I want you to be thinking about tiger mouths when you have to live. So watch this. If we just start making tiger mounts, we basically live on accident. Right? We found an eye here. We found an eye here. So, if you are in a tight spot, making tiger mounts is a very great way to just live. So, now if we get back to the game, or not the game, but my example, in this position, because the A group already has a tiger mount, I would be willing to consider it basically alive. Because it can also just keep making more tiger mounts. So A group is strong. B group also is strong, like it's in the corner. And C group is strong. It cannot be surrounded in any meaningful way. So then, in this picture, only weak group is the white group. And it's so difficult for white to live if we just cap it. Because black does not need to worry about anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's much clearer now, definitely.
So yeah, you should not be afraid of this fight. And if you are afraid of it, then yeah, try to see that this causes liberty problems, especially if white runs out now. Then you can just like be really brutal, right? You can really start like attacking white shape in every way. So just connect and make it white's problem to figure out what to do. So white will respond somehow. And then you can ladder. Okay. But it's like the game is still very powerful. Okay. What were you worried about here?
Yeah, actually, I can probably save you some time. Me and Mango talked about this during the actual game, and he made it pretty apparent that this was just about as bad as passing.
Okay, but I want to ask you, you clearly had a reason for playing this mode. So what was that reason?
Just trying to solve future problems, I guess.
Aha, okay. So can you give me a move you were actually worried about?
Well, the only thing there is a ladder, and it runs into the wall, so it would just be a ladder in my territory. And I think I misread somewhere that a ladder running through your territory is causing more problems than it's actually gaining.
Okay. So it is true that white could, if you pass, white could try to break the ladder. But if white breaks the ladder, then okay, you take it. it is still difficult for white to find an aggressive move here. Because we are so strong with all of our groups. So, how could I put this? You should only be worried about the ladder and be in a hurry to take it if you have some weak group that the ladder affects. If there is a ladder breaker that is actually really dangerous to you, then you should be worried about the ladder. But here that is not the case. So, could you come up with a more interesting move than taking the stone?
You mean besides J14?
Well, yeah, I think J14 is a perfect move. Connect our stones. Or try to anyhow. And don't let white push through our shape. Because letting the opponent push through like this and cut like this are very different propositions. And that is because in a cut, the opponent also gets a weak group. So it's a fight. Right? If the opponent gets to push through, then only you have a weak group. So that is why you should not easily let the opponent push through your shape. Okay. What's the idea with this move?
Well, I figured if he tried to curl around me with a Hane, then I could get him caught in a tiger's mouth, so I should be able to extend vertically.
Okay. Are you in danger? If white harness, are you in danger?
No, I don't think it was danger. It's just that's how I expected him to expand from.
So, right. This move simply isn't doing enough. So, at this point, you should decide which area is the biggest. Are you worried about white building more than you on the left side? Or do you believe you... And my Discord crashed. And my Discord crashed. Very nice. I believe I am back in the call.
Yep, you're back.
Yeah. So, in this position, you should be thinking about, can white build more in the left? Or can you build more on the right? Which do you believe is the case?
Well, it's still in my mind. It seems as if something around like K13 would be important, and I don't entirely understand why. Like I feel like the tone there would radiate influence in such a way,
Yep,
but
I'm getting there. So let's make that judgment first.
as far as who has more right now, I think white might have more because of the top, but that's just because I don't know what to do with it.
So right now top side is basically territory. So you're saying you're worried about white getting to build more than black can?
Yeah.
Okay. If that is the case, then your move on this turn should aim to either remove points from white or limit white's potential. Right? You realized white can build more than you can. So you don't have time to build. You have to do something about white's territory. So then, you identified this move earlier. Maybe it makes sense to play this now. And if you're worried about a move like this, then the reason you don't have to be worried about this is that this move is go-day. You do not have to respond to this in any way. Right? So if white decides to play here, hey, you can keep being annoying. You can keep destroying white's side. So white is not interested to play there either. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's pretty clear. And I would assume that whatever move I did take would have been bigger and demanded a response. And that response would be bigger than something around K13 too.
Definitely. But notice that you were able to make the judgment that the left side is important. So then in the game, try to make that judgment. And okay, first in your turn, you should decide, can I tenuki? And that decision can simply be made by, is this move sente or not? Do I have to respond? And I think you can quite quickly come to the conclusion that you do not have to respond. So then, you have to make the judgment, which area is the most important. And after you have decided on the area, then you can look for a move in that area. And then, in the game, I'm sure you actually could come up with this move. Because this was a move you pinpointed earlier. And if you play here, I would say the game is in white's favor, because white got the push through your shape on top side, which feels bad. But it is still playable. The game is not over. Now, when we do this thing, we just let white solidify the left side and then even reduce the right side a bit. Then sadly I have to say that the game is starting to look extremely difficult for black. And right now, even if black gets everything, like say from this area, so say here, it is really difficult to imagine black can actually get all of this. It is still quite difficult to say that could equal this area from white and this area, right?
Yeah.
So the game is getting really difficult. And here white got the push in even more. And so left left, yeah. So the game is now basically over, sadly. But the game was over because of let's say before these three moves, the game was entirely playable. With these three moves, the game very quickly became hugely in white's favor. And the reason is simply that while these two moves for you are not actually solidifying your territory, the moves white is getting on the left side are. So white's these stones have all so much more value than these three. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I was forcing him to do something that was good for him.
Right. So, yeah. You should... And the first big mistake was just about shape. And the shape mistake was that you let white push through instead of letting white cut through. If you can force the opponent to cut, that is always better than letting the opponent push through. Because when the opponent gets to push through, only you have problems. The opponent doesn't. And let's do something. We can, in this position, we can even imagine that saving the h15 stone is too much trouble. In which case, we could play this way. And with it would be just fine. And you can probably immediately see why this game is much easier for black than compared to what happened in the real game.
Yeah, that's a huge difference.
Yeah. And this is just because we didn't let the opponent push through, instead we forced them to cut. And when they cut, it means this cutting stone, this 2 stone, was a liberty issue. So we can push it around. Yeah. So so yeah, like at this position and at latest, you have to make the judgment that which area actually matters. Now, what if you made the other decision? What if you made the decision that you can build more than white? Where could you play then?
Maybe something around like N6 or N5, something to try to shove towards L3.
I would maybe like to play a bit more actively, like maybe the cap. Cap is an active move. Do you know why? And what is the follow-up from a cap?
I don't know it.
Okay, the cap threatens the attachment on either side. So you can consider the capped stone and the capping stone as one single shape. And in this shape, the attachments are the danger. Do you want to play this forward a few moves to see what happens?
Yeah, please, if you would.
Sure. Give me a white move.
It is pretty tough for white, isn't it? I guess Hane below.
Hana below. Okay. I guess in this position, black would actually be happy enough to connect.
To extend from K2.
Like this. This is the move you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I guess black can clamp.
That's really as far as white's gonna get.
White can Hane under, but we are still sealing in very nicely. White could also push up, in which case we are getting into a fight. Okay, well, black has to connect. We are getting into a fight inside black's territory, or inside black's influence. So this fight is likely to be good for white, but I would not want to play this way as black. A reason being, it is very unlikely this group actually dies. So instead, I would maybe play this way. And now if white does this, we can double on it. And white probably cuts and then this. And hey, we are building. So from now on actually, if the opponent captures stone, think about the attachments and play one of them when you have time. No.
Whichever one would be better for him.
What?
So you would want to play the attachment that would be better for the opponent, right? To prevent it from taking it.
Right, so I would say if you want to keep it simple, play the attachment that is actually building points for you.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. I mean, do you actually need to answer a cap as well?
Right. So I was getting there. Because these attachments are so powerful, that is why the cap is often considered center. So usually the response is one of these moves. Either Keima in one direction or just one space jump. And I guess save white plays here, which is the most normal move. Then black can start sealing this array. So here probably white might be tempted to play this way. But a move like this is a bit suspicious as it's not building anything for white. And later on it might again get under attack. So these are kind of the choices. And this is why you usually want to respond to a cap. So that
it
would
kind
be...
of looks like your attachment and the response that came kind of built just about in the same spot vertically.
Wait, my attachment and what?
So, sorry, I'm trying to articulate. So if whether white responds or not, you end up kind of building the same thing that's good for black.
In this case, yeah, which means if you play the cap, white most likely in this game would play here to fight against it. So there is another kind of cap that you can choose when you want to force the direction, which is this one. Now this move is way worse. And you can just push. So usually something like this follows, right? This does give white more, but yeah, I'm getting there. But it does give you the direction you are interested in. And the last option is the shoulder hit. This is probably my least favorite option here. If white pushes up, white is actually getting much more than black is. Right? Like, white is just building more. So, usually if you want to play a shoulder hit, it's played as some kind of reduction move. And when you're using it to reduce, the difference to a cap is that the shoulder hit forces a direction. When you play here, white could choose to defend this way, because that side is bigger. If you shoulder it here, that is not an option. White is forced to build towards the bottom side. Right? That is the difference. Right. I think that's everything that is interesting about this game. Do you have any questions?
No, you've lined out quite a bit. I've got a lot to think about, so I don't have any other questions I'd want to add more to my thinking quite yet.
Yeah, sure, that's probably a good idea. That is also why I didn't want to go through what happened later in the game, because everything there is much less important than what we covered now. Because you don't want to get to such a bad position in the first place.
That makes a ton of sense, yeah.
Sure. Well, you don't have any questions, so I think I'll end the recording here.
Okay. Thank you for your time.